everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the report for the solar eclipse in Aquarius on the 15th of February at 9 PM Universal Time, and outlining the key themes that this solar eclipse involves, along with the key aspects taking place, because quite a few planets are linked in with this eclipse. So it's going to be important that they're all covered as best I can. Now, solar eclipse is about new beginnings, but it also sets a 6-month tone in terms of a lesson that we all need to be learning over the next few months. The solar eclipse in Aquarius is a south node eclipse, so we're looking at transforming the past or overcoming past issues, rather than it being like a north node eclipse like this lunar eclipse was. So we're looking about how things are at the moment based on past conditioning and transforming it. Because if we don't transform the past, then we can't really move into the future. And by that I don't mean that we're ever out of the present moment, but our mind can't really focus on the future if it's buried under a ton of past conditioning. So sometimes we have to transform our relationship with our past in order to perceive the future. And Aquarius is the future-oriented sign of the zodiac. It's about looking to the future, identifying new ways of being that will be more empowering to humanity than the current status quo is, and taking action to bring that vision into being. But part of the lesson with the solar eclipse in Aquarius is going to be about learning detachment. Now, I don't mean being detached as in cold and aloof or uncaring. What I mean by detachment is learning to separate ourselves from our conditioned responses, to view things more objectively by being able to take a step back and view things in a more impersonal way. So rather than looking at things from a personal perspective, it's stepping back for a moment and taking out our own personal responses or emotional reactions to things and trying to look at them in an impersonal way. I mean, Aquarius is often linked with the third eye, and this is about looking at things in a more enlightened and objective way, which necessarily means becoming more impersonal and seeing things, or striving to see things as they are rather than how we think they are. Now, one of the things with the South Node being in Aquarius is highlighting is any tendency where we may prefer to remain aloof rather than becoming engaged with things. So this solar eclipse is also an opportunity to overcome the tendency for aloofness and learning to converse or to express the truth or explain the truth to other people or our perspective, and in as honest a way as possible, and to make sure that whatever we're saying is going to be geared towards helping other people or helping them empower themselves rather than to put people down. And with Aquarius, because of the knowledge it's linked to and seeing things in a wider perspective, one of the things we also need to be mindful of is any tendency towards arrogance based on the assumption that we know more than other people. The point of Aquarius is any ideas that we have should be geared towards a more humanitarian and altruistic perspective, rather than making ourselves more special at the expense of other people. Because Aquarius is about, ideally, enlightened community. It's understanding that we need to know who we are as a unique individual so that we can become our best selves. But equally, we're part of, every single person is like that anyway, so in that respect we're all the same. But for a community to be truly healthy, and for it to, if it's a community based around a shared objective or a shared goal, then it's important that the community is based on mutual empowerment. Each person is given the opportunity to grow, to become the best versions of themselves. So it's a balance between nurturing the individual and nurturing the needs of the group. And for us to do that, we also need to become or achieve greater detachment and look at things impersonally, and recognise that sometimes our thinking patterns become too rigid and they prevent us from seeing a new way of doing things. Because at the end of the day, if there's a problem that we're trying to tackle, rarely can that problem be solved at the same level of consciousness that it was created. So Aquarius is about expanding consciousness, expanding to a more universal consciousness rather than just personal. And it's about connecting with the higher mind, where all new ideas stem from and all visions come from. It's stilling the rational and logical mind and the ego long enough to perceive this new vision and perceive what part we have to play in order to bring this vision about. Because obviously William's society as it is, but there's also a higher vision coming into being through people, and this is about enlightened communities that empower one another rather than have a strict hierarchy and people were subjugated into one person or group of people. It's about achieving a sense of oneness, but with Aquarius it's at a more mental level and at the level of the mind rather than emotionally feeling that sense of oneness. It's learning to recognise that everything is interconnected, and whatever actions we take, or whatever thoughts we think or beliefs we may hold, also have an influence over our surroundings and the collective unconscious. So we each have responsibility to transform our minds and align it more with the higher mind rather than the separation consciousness of the ego, in order for us to see what is the best course of action to transform some of the issues we're facing these days, and to embrace a more enlightened and objective perspective. And this is also an opportunity to become an embodiment of this principle of embodying the sense of detachment from situations, so we see things objectively, we don't take everything personally. And also it's embracing the new, learning to embrace new knowledge rather than clinging to what we think we already know. So it's about dissolving old thought patterns and embracing new original ways of doing things that are more likely to transform a problem by embracing a more holistic solution rather than using conventional methods which may have worked initially but have reached a point where the nature of the problem is different and conventional solutions no longer work. This is time for trying something new, of recognising that the way we've been doing things may not actually be particularly conducive to solving the problem, and may need to embrace another way of doing things. Now Mercury is in a close conjunction with the Moon, close conjunction with the solar eclipse. So with Mercury being so close by, our rational minds have an option to be transformed along the same lines. So have our rational minds opened up to new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, and new insights, and communicating more empowered ideals to other people, and sharing ideas that could transform our communities and give people new ideas or new perspectives that can free them from any kind of mental prisons. But it's not our job to preach to people. It's, if people want to listen and are open to new ideas, and by all means share them, but it's not a case of trying to ram our ideas down other people's throats because we think we're more superior. At the end of the day, we're not. We're all born equal, but through various choices, some of us keep rising in consciousness and others end up lower. But we all have the opportunity to transform ourselves, and we all have the potential to change and by embracing greater responsibility for ourselves, and but also have a social responsibility, so understand what we need to do to help others, we can slowly regain some of the freedom, some of the enlightened perspective that we all may have been born with, but we forgot for whatever reason, or was conditioned out of the ideas that may have been seen too radical when we were young. But we all have the opportunity to transform ourselves and liberate ourselves from mental slavery, because with Aquarius it's showing us where our mindsets or the ways we think about things are too limited. They're we may have too personal perspective, and we don't bother looking for a higher meaning or a higher understanding of things that will allow us to see beyond the mental prison and realise that we can just walk out of it. We don't have to hold on to these thought patterns, but we have to face the attachment to these thought patterns to begin with and transform them. We also have Juno in a close conjunction as well. So Juno here is about that need for freedom within relationships, whilst honouring each other's individuality, and it's time for recognising the need to work together in mutually empowering relationships and building communities where relationships are based on an equal footing and based on helping each other grow rather than one person growing at the expense of another. Because we've seen the results where we try and pursue growth at the expense of other people. It just causes more problems than it's worth. So this is a time for looking for mutually empowering solutions to things, and then getting creative and taking action along those lines. The ruler of this eclipse is Uranus, and Uranus is in a sextile to the solar eclipse, so the Uranus energy is going to be particularly strong here and helpful for utilising the solar eclipse. Uranus is in Aries at the moment and has been transforming our sense of self-identity for the past 7 years almost, also ideally transforming our desires. Uranus is a planet that connects us with the higher mind. It connects us with the empowering ideals and the humanitarian ideals that we need to embrace in order to transform the world for the better. But that transformation can only take place if we transform ourselves first. So during this connection, the sextile is a fairly smooth flowing energy, so it's not going to feel like clashing sort of energy with the eclipse. The energy may be mutually transformative or mutually flowing, and with Uranus being connected to the Sun and Moon, this is an opportunity to transform our sense of identity, to transform our subconscious and emotional conditioning through embracing the insights from the higher mind, through embracing a pioneering spirit and embracing courage to face the unknown and accept the fact that we can't know everything in advance. We may have an idea, but if we don't take action, it's just going to remain an idea. But likewise, we also need to remain open to the fact that we may have to change course or course correct at various points along the journey. And we may start off with a goal going in one particular direction, but events may emerge or surprises may suddenly come that cause us to course correct and moving in a different direction, and that's okay as long as we're moving forward and we're looking for what direction we need to be going to create the future that we want, because the future is created in the present moment. The past and future don't really exist except in the mind. Everything happens in the present moment. But if we don't know what direction we're going to go in, then we don't know what actions to take in the present moment. So Uranus's visionary qualities allow us to identify the direction that we want to go in life. Ideally, it'd be one that is going to be mutually empowering and help other people, and will strengthen our community and benefit the community. And Uranus can help us to recognise where we need to transform ourselves to enable us to do this. Now, the other key aspect is going to be from Jupiter, and this is square to the bodies in Aquarius. And this square highlights the need to, with Jupiter in Scorpio, it highlights the need to transform ourselves through letting go of old emotional attachments, letting go of resentments. Jupiter in Scorpio is about making the unconscious conscious. It's recognising where we've stored old pains, old resentments, old grudges, and old hurts in our unconscious, and it's coming to the surface now, and we need to face these resentments, these feelings, and through forgiveness let go of them. Because Scorpio is also about merging power with one another and sharing power, but in order for us to do that, the personal self, which is the ego, needs to be acknowledged, faced and challenged, and we need to go through the often difficult process of facing the emotional pains and letting go of it. And because if we don't do this, then we're just going to carry on doing everything based on our own personal desires, and this may cause conflict with other people, as we're not trying to help others, we're just all in it for ourselves. With Jupiter and Scorpio, we need to go through that spiritual alchemy of going into our own personal darkness, our own personal shadow, facing the attachments that remain in the shadow and drive the egoic desires, and transform them, to let go of them, in order for us to become stronger, and in order for us to be able to work with one another. So with Scorpio and Jupiter here creating a square to the solar eclipse, this is highlighting the need to transform ourselves through forgiveness, to break free of personal consciousness and embrace a more universal consciousness, which is Aquarius is more specialised in. But Scorpio's gate that we have to go through in order to get into that impersonal way of viewing things, that allows us to embrace detachment and allows us to let go of things which no longer serve. But we have to transform ourselves through that phoenix process of dying to the old to be born anew, and to recognise that true power comes from within us and it's always been there, and we only feel powerless and victimised if we're giving our power away to other people. So this eclipse marks a 6-month lesson of greater detachment, but with Jupiter forming that square, it's also highlighting the fact that we need to embrace forgiveness, we need to overcome the tendency for aloofness, and we need to be willing to work together in community by embracing a higher collective vision, and working towards that with other people who are striving in the same direction, and together we can create more empowered communities that help each individual member and are not just benefiting some people at the cost of others. So I hope it's a useful gauge for the solar eclipse. There's a lot of transformation possible for us, but we have to do the work ourselves. It's not going to be forced upon us. We have to choose to do it. So I hope the solar eclipse brings you lots of illumination, a lot of understanding, and bring you many benefits of blessings, and much greater personal growth and collective growth. So may the solar eclipse bring you many blessings and a lot of love. Take care.